NATO is marking its 75th anniversary. It's really an interesting point, isn't it, in this conflict, and very critical, I would imagine, to the ongoing support to Ukraine, that NATO is there as an absolute stopgap.
Yes. Hello, Bev, and thank you for having me. Well, absolutely. Russia's aggression against Ukraine, Russia's full-scale invasion has highlighted the importance of NATO and almost gave it a new life, a new reason to exist. We see a confirmation of that in two countries joining NATO since then, Finland and Sweden. And of course, it only reinforced the sentiment inside Ukraine that should Ukraine have been a NATO member, it would have never been attacked. And now the majority of Ukrainians support Ukraine's eventual membership in NATO. That, of course, is not going to happen anytime soon. For now, NATO is providing mostly political support to Ukraine. Support to Ukraine provided by individual NATO members is also very important. And these declarations by Jens Stoltenberg, the head of NATO, about a possible new program of extending help for Ukraine, military assistance to Ukraine on behalf of NATO for 5 years, providing more money, is of course very much welcome in a situation when Ukraine is facing an acute shortage of weapons now.
Yeah. Even President Macron, who I think at the start of the conflict tried to almost negotiate with Vladimir Putin, has really changed his tune. He's even talking about NATO not looking at any red lines. Do you think that at any point NATO would get involved militarily in Ukraine?
Well, it will depend on the developments on the battlefield. Ukraine is holding the line on its own, has been holding the line for more than 2 years already. But Ukraine's resources are not limitless. As I said already, Ukraine is facing already a shortage of ammunition as the U.S. military aid to Ukraine is stuck in the U.S. Congress. So there have been a delay of several months already. And that military assistance is vital. Ukraine cannot survive without it. So unfortunately, I'm afraid that there might have come a point in this war when Ukrainian defenses might collapse and NATO will be forced to intervene just because there wasn't enough strong intervention before.
Yeah. What have you made of the changes to conscription in Ukraine? And in fact, it's not just Ukraine. Countries around, particularly close to Russia's borders, are really looking at expanding conscription.
Well, for more than 2 years, Ukraine only drafted conscripted men who are older than 27 years of age. And that is not very sustainable in a situation of such a huge scale aggression and invasion that Ukraine is facing. So I think the president who signed this decree finally realized that, there are not enough servicemen, and there won't be enough servicemen to help Ukraine continue defending itself, not even counterattacking, if the conscription age is not lowered. Also, the experience of other wars in other parts of the world shows us that it is very unusual for a country to have such a high bar for a conscription age. So, there is no, of course, debate about drafting men who are just 18 or very early in their 20s, but 25 seems quite reasonable, again, in the situation that Ukraine is currently in, when it is facing a shortage of ammunition, but also a shortage of resources, of human resources to continue resisting.
Yeah. What do you make of Russia? We know Ukraine is having success against Russia's sea fleet. What is Russia's moves around the Baltic Sea trying to achieve?
Well, Ukraine, which is not a maritime country, which does not have its own fleet, has been remarkably successful in decimating Russia's own Black Sea fleet. Black Sea is the sea that both Ukraine and Russia have access to. Russia has been trying to close the access to Black Sea for Ukraine, both in terms of trade, but also in military terms. And it failed on both fronts because Ukrainian grain exports have resumed. So Ukraine basically is now able to export its grain production, which is a major factor in keeping its economy afloat, to other countries. And also Ukrainian drones, especially the drones, are that weapon that is also domestically produced, so that Ukraine is more independent. It is not that reliant on their production as on other types of weapons on Western countries. So these locally manufactured drones have been able to sink Russian warships and decimate Russian Black Sea fleet. So, while Ukraine, of course, cannot match Russia in many other respects, the fact that it was able to destroy a big part of Russian Black Sea fleet is really remarkable.
Indeed. Olga, give us a sense, you're in Ukraine. How are people feeling? It just must be so difficult to keep morale up, to keep the sense of waking up every day knowing that this conflict is not going anywhere.
Well, of course, the full-scale war has been going on for more than 2 years. There are so many losses, and Russians are just keeping bombing Ukrainian civilians. Just this night in Kharkiv, on the eastern border, close to the Russian border, big city of more than 1 million people, there were Russian drone strikes, and at least 4 people have been killed, among them rescuers who arrived at the scene of the first strikes to help. The first responders were killed. And this is happening on a daily basis. So, of course, there is a lot of exhaustion, but there is still an understanding that Russia is not going to stop, because Russia wants to destroy Ukraine as a sovereign and independent state. And the only answer to that is to keep fighting.
Yeah. It is just so hard and so important that the rest of the world does come to Ukraine's aid. Great to have you on, Olga. Thank you so much.
Thank you.